Good morning, everyone. To those of you joining us in Asia, good morning. And to those of you joining us from the West Coast, good afternoon. I am Kathy Feliciano Chon, the managing partner of Fin Partners, Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Beijing offices. The return of China's outbound travel is, without a doubt, a hot topic in travel today. The world is eager to know what it looks like as China borders have reopened just very recently and how much the recent pandemic has changed how Chinese travelers are traveling today. So to do that, we collaborated with the market research firm Consumer Research Group and taking on a deep dive study of affluent Chinese travelers to understand the key changes in their preferences and expectations and why these changes matter to you today. The findings and insights are presented in this comprehensive report, Outbound, Rebound 2023, the return of Chinese travelers, and we are launching this today and you can get a full copy. This morning, we have Simon and Jenny joining us to share some of the research highlights. Thank you, Jenny and Simon. Let me give you just a quick introduction about them. Simon Tai is the Executive Director of Consumer Search Group based in Hong Kong with a 40-year history of providing strategic insights to a number of financial institutions like HSBC, JP Morgan, Julius Baer, Bank of China, as well as hospitality and hotel groups like IHG, Hilton, Hong Kong Land. And my counterpart in Shanghai, Jenny Lo. Jenny is based in Shanghai and leads Fin Partners China offices and the travel practice in China. She has worked with over 100 corporates and high-profile consumer brands in hospitality, travel, and lifestyle industries to develop their market entry strategies for China. She's helped a number of hotel groups in terms of breaking into the China market, brands like Six Senses, Editions, Fairmont, and One Hotels. And Jenny brings with us today an East-West perspective to help international brands drive success to China. Okay, I'd like to remind the audiences to leave their questions in the Q&A box, and we will also share with you both Jenny and Simon's email and contact details at the end of this talk if you'd like to be able to reach out to them directly about any specific findings. All right, we'll jump right to it. Simon, there are a ton of market research out there. But there is something very relevant about this particular research, and that is the timing of when this research was done and why it is particularly relevant. Tell us why and explain to us the research methodology.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Kathy, and good morning and good evening to the people who are on this call today. We conducted this research. The survey period was between 10 to 24th January this year. And as you know, there were a lot of announcements with the changes of the COVID policy for both Hong Kong and China during this period. So it was really timely in terms of, capturing the sentiment of how the mindset of both mainland Hong Kong or rather mainland China and Hong Kong consumers thinking about the way that they want to travel in the next 12 months. And this, research really picked up on a lot of shift, right, in terms of the way that we are seeing how people are coming out of the pandemic to really want to travel again. And the exciting thing about this is that the desire to travel is very, very strong. And it's just going to be really exciting in terms of how, they have changed and evolved. And between Jenny and myself, we are very excited to showcase how all these people have changed. But just very quickly too, in terms of the people that we surveyed, the average age, as you can see, is about 34 years old. And clearly, these are the millennial segment. So again, the millennials are very important. And we are very pleased that the people that, on this particular panel that we have talked to comes from household income of about 1.4 million. This is again significant because we're not talking to just the mass segment. We're talking to a more elevated, upper middle class segment in China, and that compute to about $200,000 in terms of what we are seeing here. And we covered tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 cities. Very comprehensive with a sample size of about 1,500 respondents. And one more thing that we do in order to screen them for this survey is that they have to have stayed in, a hotel, luxury hotel, which is about 3,000 RMB per night in the past 12 months. And they have to spend at least 50,000 RMB, which is about 7,000 on luxury products in the last 12 months. And from the research result, we found that they have made about 5.6 overseas trip in 2019. And, just as a point of interest, most of them have about 3 COVID shots because, we were all just coming out of the COVID situation in January when we were doing this study. So this is, what we'll be looking at in terms of the research profile for today.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Simon. I want to cut to the chase because, of course, top of mind for everybody here listening is when exactly can we expect that the Chinese outbound travel will return? Specifically when? And what have some of the findings told you about what that looks like?
Right. So there's a lot of very, very interesting results that we want to share with you today. And if I may, right, I just want to take a moment just to introduce the little bit of the agenda that we'll be covering, and I'll answer your question. So a lot that we want to cover in this research. Very excited to share this between Jenny and myself. I'll take you through the travel sentiment in terms of the question that you just asked. And Jenny will take on, experiential travel and hotel. And there's a lot of shift which Jenny will talk about. And it's really quite exciting to see that element as well. And we want to also talk about how hotel can take back a lot of the so-called power away from the travel sites around the looking and the booking. It doesn't mean that the travel site do not have an opportunity. It's just that there's a lot of interesting development in that front, loyalty program, sustainability, and a bit of a wrap up in terms of the summary. So back to your question around travel sentiment, if I may, if we look at the first set of results, right? When you look at the way that they want to travel in the as to the rebound, you can see that in terms of the number of trips that they want to take in the next 12 months, all right, for this year, has actually increased, which means that the robustness of the market is very significant, right? 3.8 trips that they want to take this year. And the duration has also increased to 8.7 days. And what I love is that their budget has increased very significantly from 88,000 to about 100,000 RMB, right, for this year. And, number of business trip has not increased significantly, but it's good to see that, it's stable at about 2.1 trips per year. So in terms of, answering to the question in terms of when it will happen, it's happening, and it's gradually happening. And we're already seeing the, impact of, the first wave of travelers coming in. And when, I track a lot of the luxury segment as well. And over the weekend, you could already see lines forming in some of the luxury branded stores in downtown Central. So, that impact is already felt in Hong Kong, and it's happening, very quickly. And we believe that, in the short to mid-term, a lot of the travel will be happening within the Asia Pacific region. And, in the longer term, clearly, we'll be seeing them, going out to a more international location because, all of us have experienced how when we're coming out of the so-called COVID, right, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of, not knowing what's happening. But what we are discovering is that the Chinese are learning very quickly that it's okay. Yeah, and the world is actually okay. And they are starting to want to explore in terms of, what does this okay really means to them. And Kathy, if I may, I just want to show a little bit more in terms of the next slide. In terms of the differences between the different age group as well, because, we do cover Gen Z in this particular research, and we've got about, 500 of them in the sample here, where they want to make a total of about 4.1 trips. So it's a lot stronger in terms of their desire to want to do a lot more trips. And they are also spending longer time overseas, right? So 9.3 days versus 8.7 days that we are seeing, on average. So a lot more trips that they want to take, and longer in terms of the period that they want to take. So the younger group is a little bit different from, all the other age group that we're seeing, although the other older age group has got a lot more money, which is, no surprise. And the next thing is, in terms of the location, here we go, right? So it's very interesting too, because we are picking up on a lot of location, which is closer to home, right? So the Asia Pacific region are more popular. And the good news is Hong Kong, right? Hong Kong is really popular. They do want to come, 53% of them, right? Still think of Hong Kong as their so-called first point in terms of where they want to come back to. And of course, the rest of the Asia Pacific region, all the way to Singapore, Thailand, is picking up on quite a large proportion of the traction there. But when we look at the UK, we look at Europe, we look at Australia, New Zealand, and even Canada, it's less than 20% of the travelers saying that they want to go there at this point in time. So it's not for the fact that they're not interested. It's just that there's a lot of uncertainty coming out of COVID and not being sure of what are some of the policy at that point in time when we were doing this survey. And the US is about 21%, still lower than a lot of the location in Asia Pacific. So I hope that is helpful, Kathy, in terms of the question.
Extremely helpful. And I just want to remind again our listeners that you can download this report at the end of this talk. Now, I want to go back now to there are a number of findings in this report that really debunks some of the stereotypes that have existed for years about mainland Chinese travelers. And I would love to address what were the ones that particularly stood out for you so that we can do a little bit of correction here.
All right. In terms of that particular area there, Jenny has got a lot of interesting facts around the experiential travel. But before we get to that, I've just got a few more things to just share around the sentiment as well. Just very quickly, right? Safety is a big issue for the Chinese when they travel. So, in terms of the location that they go to, safety is very, very important. I'll explain a little bit about how they would address safety in the next section. And also when it comes to travel, all the airlines still needs to have very strong COVID safety measures, to be in place so that, there's that sense of assurance as they are on the flight. And the next thing that we want to see is in terms of, the domestic versus international trip. Clearly, a lot of people, if you look at it, 80%, right, still wants to make a lot more domestic trip relative to international. Now, it doesn't mean that they do not want to go to international. 72% still want to travel internationally, but more so in terms of the international shift. And we saw this, Kathy, even before the pandemic, right? We do a lot of different studies, and among the affluent customers, we are realizing that there is a lot of interest in discovering what is in their own backyard, right? So there's a lot of second, third tier cities that they're very, very interested in discovering. And staycation is here to stay. So it's very exciting because, clearly there's a lot of pipeline that are being built in China for a lot of the hotel group in, developing cities, which a lot of this Chinese wants to go to. So this is all really, really good news. So to answer to the question in terms of some of the changes, I'll hand it over to Jenny in terms of the experiential travel section. So Jenny.
Thank you, Simon. So, Kathy, speaking of stereotype, Chinese travelers, we all know that they love shopping, but just as our data show that shopping still takes up over 1/5 of the travel budget, and note that we also expect to see an increase of overall spending by an average of 15% this year, as Simon mentioned earlier. Although, the interest in shopping remains, we see that increasingly, Chinese travelers are looking for more enriching new travel experience to indulge, to broaden their minds, and also to create fond memories.
Wonderful. So that's great. Take us through that. Super.
Sure. So let's start with luxury experience. More than 1/3 of Chinese travelers are planning to fly high in luxury, to take premium economy, business, or even first class flights. We see that there's a 7 percentage point growth in first class flights. And mind you, these figures, this growth in numbers, do not actually reflect in our sets of data for Hong Kong travelers. So you're seeing that here, the Chinese travelers are really ready to spend on luxury experience. Next, please. And here you will see a snapshot about how Chinese travelers are prioritizing experience. So on your left-hand side, 8 out of 10 travelers are more willing to pay for experiences over tangible products, especially for those from the tier 3 cities. And then travelers also plan to immerse themselves like locals. They want to take more road trips. They want to take better care of themselves. And they also want to attend more events in future holidays. So going clockwise direction, we have 80% of travelers intend to include more rejuvenation, wellness experiences on their future trips. There is also a preference towards high energy activities and exciting adventures. And this is especially true among the 26 to 35 age group who are looking for sports events, as well as outdoor sports and adventures, such as camping, hiking, cycling, and skiing, and so on. Now, in the lower left-hand corner, this is an interesting finding. It paints a very different picture from the one that we have had in the past about the preferences of Chinese travelers. Over 70% or almost 80% of them are interested in slow, recuperative travel experience. So gone are the rushed activity-packed tours that as Affluent Chinese evolved from being a tourist to becoming a traveler. So now they want to take it slow, with more than half of them actually prefer staying in a location for a longer time, experiencing the destination like a local, instead of jumping from one city to another and squeezing every minute out. Next, please. For what tickle their fancy on an overseas trips, while culinary experience remains a very strong driver for leisure travel, we see that outdoor activities such as hiking and camping that have grown in popularity during the pandemic are going to stay. What we're seeing here is that there's a trend towards natural tourism. And this trend is very evident, with 62% of travelers considering natural scenery as their first priority. But shopping remains popular, although it now becomes a third passion point. And point to note is that these activities, like interest in shopping, is actually decreasing among the younger age group when it comes to overseas travels. Next, please. So for domestic travel, we are seeing very similar trends. I think it underscores the very fact that nature and food remain top priorities as travel passion points. Travelers are also keen to visit cultural heritage and landmark with the rise of national identity and pride, especially in the last 3 years. So for hotels, hotel brands are influencing destination choices. This is also one of the interesting findings that we have spotted included in our report. Majority of respondents usually decide on a destination first, and then they will go look for a hotel. But this decision-making process, we see that it is quickly changing across various age groups. So in 2019, about 86% of affluent Chinese travelers would choose a destination first before selecting a hotel or resort. But today, that number is down to 77%. And instead, the portfolio of a hotel brand is becoming a deciding factor among savvy travelers, with 16% of them choose to plan their vacations around locations where they have a favorite hotel brands and where their favorite hotel brands has a property. And that number was only 11% in 2019. This trend is particularly evident in the 21 to 25-year-old age group, Gen Z. With 26% of them making decisions in this manner. And this actually aligns very well with the characteristics of Gen Z consumers, that they are loyal and they have high level of brand affinity once you've won their hearts. Also notable here is that is an increase in travelers who would choose a destination solely based on the location of one specific hotel or resort. You can see that here it is still a small segment, but this segment has grown from 3% 3 years ago to 8% this year. And this preference is more evident among those in Tier 1 and Tier 3 cities. We mentioned earlier that affluent Chinese travelers are keen to travel in style, and we are also seeing that they are opting to spend on accommodations, with 1 in 2 travelers are planning to stay in upscale or luxury hotels going forward. And we can tell they are totally not price or budget sensitive. They place more emphasis on past experience, star ratings or reviews, and word of mouth when it comes to hotel selection. So, which means positive guest experience alone carry great potential for repeat and new business. And interestingly, what we see here is that for affluent Chinese travelers, budget and promotional offers are among the least important factors in choosing hotels.
Wow.
But then convenience and flexibility matter. So in our research, we put together a list of 49 items of criteria of hotel services and amenities, and asked them to choose what were the most important to them. The factors deemed most important by affluent Chinese travelers emphasize the importance of 1, accessibility. So we are talking about easy access and free transportation to attractions, direct access to private beach, and etc. Apart from accessibility, 2, the second most important factor is flexible and efficient service, which means round-the-clock butler, quick and flexible check-in and check-out time to accommodate their travel schedules. So they want the service to be evolving around them, and making sure that we are, as a hotel, accommodating their travel schedule and their plans. And then the bare minimum is not enough. Chinese travelers are seeking extensive room amenities that promise comfort and relaxation in a hotel room. Whether it is customized pillow options or luxurious bedding, sleep amenities are the most important among all. And across the board, room with a good view, complimentary and well-stocked minibar, and a bathroom with spa features are also important attributes. And outside of the room, their priorities are wellness facilities among all other hotel offerings. So we see that recreation centers, spa, and fitness center are considered the most important. So there is a saying that Chinese live to eat. So dining options are clearly matter. Having a variety of cuisine, 24-hour room service, and healthy meal options are listed as important preferences here. Now, here is another findings we find it quite interesting. So independent and boutique hotels have built themselves as a social space, and we are now seeing more Chinese travelers resonate with this positioning. So consumers are now shifting their preferences towards community-minded hotel properties. What is interesting here is that when our respondents are saying that they are going to travel mostly with a companion, but then over 60% of them also want to stay in a hotel or resort where they can have an opportunity to socialize and meet new people. So they also want to know that the hotel or resort they are staying at has a friendly and welcome vibe as well. A lot of colleagues in hospitality would agree with me that design is a key element of a guest experience. And there has been conversation about how experiential design is changing the hospitality industry. Here, our research findings are showing that travelers are drawn to distinctive design and unique concept. Cookie cutter design approach is less likely to make the cut. And I must say, the hotels in China have been driving a very strong design movement. Not only do they raise the bar for the consumer here to expect more, they are also setting new benchmark for the industry at a global level. So over to you now, Simon.
Sounds good. So Kathy, I'm going to show, in terms of following up on the point that I talk about in terms of safety, in this section, we'll see how a lot of the Chinese are really very careful and thoughtful in the way that they plan their vacation. They really take the time to research and plan and think out, the itinerary, because like what Jenny has said, they are thinking about longer vacation. They're thinking about a lot more so-called thoughtful, slow, recuperative, and really exploring the world. And because of all these things that they want to do, they feel that they need to actually plan, right? And really plan carefully in order to maximize that experience for themselves. So very quickly, if we look at the next slide, if we look at the bottom of the slide here, you can see that almost 37%, right? Almost 40% of the travelers that we spoke to plan 3 weeks or more in advance. This is really quite significant. Right? Very few of us actually do that kind of planning, in a lot of our busy life. We tend to just go on a lot of the vacation that we go on because somebody else planned for it, but they take the time to plan for this, right? And then we do see also, in terms of a slight increase in terms of people who do a little bit more spontaneous travel, who have got less than a week, and we believe that a lot of this are the domestic play, all right, in China, and the younger segment that are doing this as well. And in terms of the next slide that we see, right, the internet and social media is still the main source in terms of where they do a lot of their research and they get a lot of their information. And when we look at the next element that we see here. Now, this is really, really interesting. I want to take a little bit of time to look at this as well, because, in the media, and we've discussed this, Kathy, right, and with Jenny as well, there's a lot of buzz around the online, the mobile, and, how our world is going all digital and mobile. But if you look at this data here, 74%, all right, almost 75% of, the travelers in China are still booking offline. Now, this is very significant because the thing is, the Chinese feels that they want the assurance in terms of the itinerary that they have booked is, and when they arrive at the location, all those details are there, and that they do have the accommodation and that safe space to be in, right? And what we have also seen with companies like Ctrip, they have really expanded their footprint offline as well. In 2019, we saw them, hiring a total of about 5,000 people with over 1,300 physical store that they open, to accommodate this offline booking. And currently, Ctrip has a total of more than 3,000, all right, offline location. And we know them as an online play, but it's so significant in terms of the shift that we are seeing. Again, these are all really quite interesting shift that we are seeing with the way that the industry is accommodating to the changing Chinese needs. And what are they looking for? And I love this too, because the thing is, the Chinese are looking for very practical information about the travel destinations, such as, the seasons, the climate, the culture. So they are really learning about all this element, which is why, again, that so-called preparedness to offer them that peace of mind, that assurance, that safety. And we are also looking at the recommended itinerary and personal travel diary and blogs that are also important in terms of sources of information that they are looking for information around. Okay, so the next one, which I think is also very interesting, is loyalty program. Now, I know that, we all have some form of loyalty programs, and, from a lot of the so-called developed countries, we are very used to a lot of the so-called the Western offer, right? The way that, we are thinking about it is very transactional, because the thing is, what can we get in return, right, for the points that we are earning, and how do we trade the points? But with the Chinese, in terms of this particular area here, they look at loyalty very, very differently. It's more about relationship building. It's more about, really allowing for conversation to happen, allowing them to learn, allowing them to really experience, and allowing them to get closer to you and to form what they call the community. So let's have a quick look at the results. And if you look at the loyalty programs that they have, right, it's very interesting to see that hotels actually trump airline in this particular area here with 64%, right, of the mainland Chinese having hotel loyalty programs relative to airline. And this is interesting too, because when we look at Hong Kong, right, we have a different element where Hong Kong, the travelers look at airline and they have got a lot more airline than hotel, which is again, the flip of what we see with China. And the next thing that we see as well is, with the mainland Chinese, like I said before, they're looking for services. They're looking for updated news. They're looking for membership privileges, around service, around priority. And this lands to what we call recognition, right? And then and this is important because when we contrast this data again with Hong Kong, you can see that in Hong Kong, they're really looking for rewards. And, it's more of a transactional type relationship that we're seeing relative to what the Chinese are looking for. And they're asking for relationship. They're asking for, genuine bond. And they want that feeling that they're involved in the conversation. And you can see that Hong Kong is really about how I can get promotion and special offer. And now, this, I think, is so exciting, especially in the way that we're thinking about engaging with the Chinese. Because the thing is, with a lot of the hotel groups, right, we do not need to engage them only when they're traveling. Because the thing is, with the loyalty program, they talk about, a third of them says that they want the ability to use the benefit in their home cities. So this is really exciting. They want to use the gym. They want to use the lounge, right, for a lot of their meetings. And again, this is very different in the way that, the Hong Kong travelers have around their mindset. And, all of us always think about free upgrades when we are thinking about our hotel points. This is something that is top of mind when we ask a lot of travelers outside of China. Internationally, free upgrade is the key factor in terms of why people would have a hotel loyalty program. But the Chinese are engaging it quite differently, right? The narrative is very different. It says, you know what? Talk to me even if I'm not traveling, right? So if I'm in Shanghai, if I'm in Beijing, if I'm in Guangzhou, continue to engage me in those conversations because, I want to be engaging with you and I want to continue to be a part of your ecosystem. The last thing that I want to just take everybody, through in terms of this particular report is that, in terms of sustainability, a lot of the Chinese are still not aware of what the standards are just yet, right? So we'll work with some hospitality group where, it was very clear that there's a lot of confusion around what the standards are. So are they interested? Yes, they are interested. But do they know what to do about it? No, they don't, because a lot of us are not educating them on this, which is why this particular result is coming through. We asked them about, I worry about the impact that my holiday may have on the environment, and only 55% of them actually says that they agree with this particular statement. It's not their fault. It's because, there's just too many confusing standard in the world today, and not a whole lot of people understand what this really means. And when we look at the different age group, the 21 to the 36 years old, we see similar, numbers showing up. And then when we look at the different tiers of city, again, very similar across all the different tiers of city. And what this is suggesting to us is that, there is nothing out there that is really helping them understand what's happening and how do they get involved and how do they participate actively and productively with sustainability. Right. And with that, I just want to quickly sum up, in terms of what we have learned, some of the key takeaway. The Chinese travelers are definitely back, and they're looking for a lot more domestic travel in the short to mid-term, although international travel desire is very strong. Leisure and experiential travel to discover culinary experience. Kathy, you just announced the 50 top restaurant. I think this is going to be really exciting for them. Build new connection, uncover new destination, which Jenny talks about. A lot more indulgence. They are looking for a lot more elevation. The abundance in terms of the hotel room, because they're not just asking for a basic room now. They want all the luxury amenities that the room has to provide both style and comfort, and more thoughtful planning to enhance safety and overall well-being. And this is very, very important. We need to assure them that they are in a safe space when they're traveling outside, of their home city. more ease, convenience, efficiency in overall service and product offering. A lot of demand around things like 24-hour, not just room service, but butler service. And more social networking and long-term relationship via loyalty program. And remember, I remember a long time ago, 10 years ago, I was doing a piece of research for a hospitality group where the Chinese are saying, when I go to a resort, I'm not interested in engaging with any of the guests. We are not for going out to the beach to lie down on the beach and enjoy the sun, right? I just want to go shopping. I want to do it with my family. But now they want to be part of that so-called community within the resort and to meet other people around the world within that resort. And finally, more education required to generate awareness around sustainability to help them. Because the thing is, from a lot of the luxury studies that we have seen, they're interested and they feel that they want to be responsible. They just do not know how to participate in this particular area. So with that, we are open to a lot of the questions that I'm sure a lot of people have. Happy.
So I actually want to address to Simon's point, the last point about sustainability. I think, when, absolutely correct. I think our research findings actually reflect what is actually going on here in the market, right? And I believe that when we try to understand how sustainability resonates with consumers, we also need to take one step back and start with the macro picture and see what are the key drivers behind. So, if you look at 5 years ago and then now, Chinese consumers have become increasingly more environmentally conscious. And this is because we have the government policy driving that, especially at a national level with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And that also activates the media machine nationwide to help drive it forward. So if we talk to any news outlet and publications, they are keen on any stories that have a sustainability angle. Now, on a day-to-day basis, that situations actually vary greatly. And I would say anecdotally, consumers are still not very mindful about the basics like the use of plastic or food waste, etc. But we know that it is a process that we're not jumping from 0 to 100 overnight. But at this point, there is still a gap between what consumers are hearing and knowing and what they are actually doing. To put it in the context of travel, we have to agree that sustainability is not the first thing that comes to mind, as our data show that, nor it is a key decision-making driver, especially when the messaging is mostly about how many liters of water we have saved here. We have planted how many trees in a remote mountain last weekend and all that. Those are very good for brand credentials, and consumers expect that. But we think that, what really resonates to the consumer in a meaningful way is when we actively engage them, empower them to get involved, and give them a role to play. So to give you an example, when we brought in one hotel, a New York-based mission-driven luxury hotel brand inspired by nature, and they are one of the best practices in sustainability in the hospitality market. So when we brought this brand over and helped them launch their first hotel in China, from architecture to room amenities, there are so many stories behind it. But actually, when you look at what really resonated most with the consumer is that it's all about the room amenities that, they have packages with instructions in a very witty and humorous way to suggest them to give the amenity a second life. So you can use the shower cap this way as a shoe protector. You can use it to wipe your laundry and all that. Cotton bud, after you've used it, what else can you do with it? And we see that, this is actually resonated most with the consumer. And we see that on social media, we have people talking about that. More so about, the more brand story. So I believe for sustainability, one way to go about that and connect with the Chinese consumer is to create a meaningful a way to connect with them by basically getting them involved and do something together with you.
Guys, I want to make sure that we leave enough time for questions here. We've got one in particular from Karina Chorngel. Question is about airlift. When is capacity expected to normalize? And when that happens, do we expect to see a shift in travel from domestic to regional long haul? Who would like to take that?
So Kathy, like what we saw with a lot of the data that is being collected right now is that, there's a lot of uncertainty, right? And in the near term around how the Chinese are feeling right now, but they're gradually, moving towards a more comfortable feeling around, the world opening up. And as they are traveling, they're seeing that, the world is actually okay. Right, and what we expect to see, as with luxury, in terms of the sentiment around the way that they want to spend, we believe that if nothing, right, nothing severe is happening with a lot of the so-called geopolitical tension, the way that the world is shaping up, and hopefully, no crazy news that are coming up from Europe and the US, we could see this recovering towards the end of the year in the last quarter, right? We do have to give them some time, but the expectation is that there will be very significant pickup towards the last quarter, and we're seeing this in tandem with a lot of the way that they're spending with luxury, products as well.
Great. Now, you've shared some of the findings relating to this particular cohort, but I want to spend a little bit more time in drilling down. What can we expect from China's Gen Z travelers going forward, and how are they different from the rest of the world, and how can brands prepare for them?
The Gen Z?
Yes.
All right. We do have a little bit more around the Gen Z in terms of this data, and maybe we can show you. From this survey, right? Again, what we have seen is that they are very keen on taking longer trips. And this group also has started buying luxury at 19 years old, right? Their exposure to luxury is 19. For most people who are in the millennial segment, their first exposure is at 23, right? But for this particular group, it's 19. So they know a lot about what's going on, and they've got this very elevated sense around what they want in terms of quality. So in terms of the innovation, in terms of the design, in terms of what they want, is very, very significant in terms of their desire. So in terms of some of the key highlights that we have seen is that, again, we see that they want to make longer trips. They're more likely to do domestic currently. They are very likely to travel with friends and parents at this point because they're still very young. Natural scenery, culinary experience, activities in the cities are the things that they want. But one thing that is more significant than the other age group is that, like I said before, the innovation element is very, very interesting with them because they're looking for special theme accommodation, right? Mansion and villa. Whereas we find that the older groups are still looking for more traditional offering. So this is, again, very interesting around what we're seeing. But the thing is this, right? They really do want to travel with comfort. They want style, and they're very willing to pay for it, right? And price is not a so-called inhibiting factor in slowing them down in the way that they're discovering things for themselves. And they're really going out there to find the best of everything.
I think I can also add to that, like Gen Z are loyal. I mentioned that especially for hotel brands, they are more willing to engage and book directly, and there's a high level of brand affinity. They are also very spontaneous. 21% of them actually make travel bookings in less than 1 week, and that actually surpassed millennials and Gen Z X in China and all the Gen Z across the world in terms of how impulsive they are. And also you will also probably hear from like general research about Gen Z in China is that they're very mindful. So when it comes to wellness pursuit, generally the older age group will focus more on physical wellness, but Gen Z cares more about their mental health, and they would engage in mindfulness meditation or even temple getaway. And one more point, they are very eager to stand out and want people to look at them with envy. So what does it mean? They crave one-of-a-kind products or tailored service, which means that travel operators who have the ability to create people's experience, especially tailored to each Gen Z travelers, they're going to hold the power to potentially capture their hearts.
I've got one question here about retail. Is shopping's decline as a priority for younger Chinese travelers, more about brand product offer being less appealing or appropriate, or is it a more definitive move away from retail per se for this particular market? Simon, do you want to take that on?
Sure. You know what? They still love shopping, right? We've been focusing around the culinary, the activities that they want to do with the natural scenery, but shopping is still very, very, very key for a lot of those people. And if we look at, the items that they, if we can look at the confidence in terms of the luxury confidence, can we go to the next slide? Oh, right. This is a piece of data that we've been tracking for a long time now, and we look at the bottom of that slide, right? Or January 2023 at the bottom, the darker. We asked the question: do you want to spend more, spend the same, spend less? Look at the spend more. It has gone a record high of 52%. And these are people who want to spend a lot of money on luxury. And in terms of spending less, it's fallen back to the same level as 2019 at about 10%. So this is all very encouraging in terms of spending. And the young people are buying. However, they are a lot smarter in the way that they want to engage, because the thing is this: a lot of them are thinking that the Chinese brands, right, are now getting better or equivalent to what we call the heritage brand that they're used to. So among all the different categories that we have seen, right, if you look at history and story of the brand, craftsman, function, design, price, celebrity, creativity, elegance, relevance, style, uniqueness, if we look at this particular data, a lot of them, right, majority of them feel that Chinese brand can be better or the same as Western brand. So this is again very significant in terms of the way that we're seeing, Gen Z shifting in terms of the way that they're thinking about brands. So they're not just going for big brands; they're going for a lot more of, what is it about the brand that is telling me and connecting me with their story in order for me to want to engage. Yep.
Great. Super. Now we have 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure I cover all the questions that we have so far. So there's one here in particular. We talked about Gen Z. Now let's shift our focus now on the family segment. Are there any significant behavioral changes that we were able to extract from the report, and that also paints a picture of the difference between single versus couple travel, family, types of travel within international? So international travel, I should say. Anything that you guys can share from the report?
Yeah, so Kathy, the thing is, from a lot of our studies and qualitatively, in terms of the focus groups that we have done, there's a love-hate relationship that the Chinese have with bringing along their parents to travel. And they're still bringing their parents, right, to travel currently, because, there's this thing about traveling as a family unit. There's a lot more around them wanting to break away from that element, but there is that so-called Chinese guilt, where they're still traveling as a group. So that family element from this particular research hasn't shifted as much as we thought that it would shift. So the family unit is still a very, very important component in terms of the way that they're traveling. And this is not referring to the, younger segment. We are seeing a lot more differences with the Gen Z, but we're seeing this more with the so-called, millennial segment.
Great. We have one question here. Do we know how competitive Hong Kong is over Singapore as a destination or a stopover?
Yeah, Hong Kong is still considered to be a very important luxury hub. And I will show you some data as well around this particular area, because, from a lot of our studies, majority of the Chinese are still thinking of coming to Hong Kong. And the reason why they're coming to Hong Kong is because, a lot of them believe that Hong Kong is still a very, very important, from the study, right? You can see 77% of the respondents that we spoke to, and we've got about 2,000 respondents in the survey, that thinks that Hong Kong is still a very, very important luxury hub relative to the rest of Asia, because in Hong Kong they can find products. The luxury shopping in Hong Kong surpasses anywhere else in Asia. 47% believe that, and it has special edition pieces that are not available anywhere else. And finally, it has got the best luxury services in Asia now. That is debatable, but that's what the Chinese believe in terms of, the responses that are coming back.
Great. So with about 7 minutes left, I wanted to ask you both, how should travel brands reconnect with Chinese travelers after 3 years? What are
Jenny?
some of the
think-
tips? Yeah.
One of the motivators that drive decision making is good experience, good time, good memory. And we see this in their choices of destination, and it is also flagged as a key reason for choosing hotels. Anecdotally, what I keep hearing from people around me and also on social media is that they talk about how much they want to revisit their favorite destinations, their favorite resorts, cafe, shops that they last visited before COVID. Now, what I'm hearing here is the anticipation and the emotions people experience when they travel. So to reconnect with Chinese travelers, we believe tapping into their emotions, using narratives and stories to forge a connection and focus more on the experience and offer them a more human and engaging way would be the way to go instead of showing them a laundry list of product features. And also the other point that I would say would be important is the use of video and multimedia content. There is a widespread use of technology by tourist attractions, museum, and all that to offer virtual tours to engage and stay connected with travelers. And China honestly has been ahead of the game, especially, and they start the trend very quickly since the beginning of the pandemic. Which means like consumers are very used to having rich media content that is graphical, that is multidimensional, engaging and interactive to help them discover and explore travel experience. So that would be something I believe an effective way to reconnect with Chinese travelers by showing what like the destination, the hotel and resorts, and any other travel experience have to offer to them.
Great. So my key takeaway here is that longer, slower, more experiential, an affinity for nature, wellness, and social connections. Now, with few minutes left, I want you to give me your top predictions for the coming 12 to 18 months in relation to this particular market as a final note. Trends, predictions.
I will start with a trend that I think we will see less going forward, and that would be those ambitious travel itineraries. Those, hitting 7 cities in a week kind of holidays. We believe we will see less of that. That trend is going to fade as the market is getting more and more mature, and people are visiting a destination like a traveler, not a tourist. And they definitely want to spend more time in one location to explore and discover, to feel the vibe of the place. So I believe this, I kind of answer it in 2 ways, like the trends that we are seeing fading, but at the same time, the trends that we are seeing more going forward.
Great.
Yeah.
Simon, any final words?
Yeah, continue to elevate, continue to improve the product, continue to talk to them, because the thing is this: we are seeing the dawn of the new era of Chinese travelers, and they are evolving very differently from what we traditionally think of travel, from a very Western mindset in terms of the way that we're thinking, because every concept that we have taken from, the Western world to put into the Chinese so-called landscape has been really, really redefined. And because they really want us to repackage it for them, right? And there is that real understanding that, they want genuine connection and conversation and connection with them at a more so-called Chinese level, in terms of the way that they're thinking. So how do we actually shift from, a very, traditional element around what we know before to a more innovative new way of thinking around the way that the Chinese are evolving their thinking. And there's a real pride in the way that they are evolving, in the way that they want to engage with service and product offering. So listen to them, talk to them, and continue to engage, re-engage, and engage again, because they want those conversations.
Well said,
Great.
Simon. I would like to add one more point is that, and I always end my sharing about China that way. I mean, we also have to keep in mind that China is a very dynamic market. And there's no one theory that you can apply to the entire China. So the trend that we are seeing less or more in affluent segment will likely still apply to other market segment or not. So we used to probably deal with China with maximum 4 market segmentations. But now, because the market has matured and evolved, we are actually talking about more segmentation here now. And dealing with each segment, they have their and all that requires a different strategy. So China is not just one big market, but it is very, very diverse and dynamic.
And I think it's a perfect ending to this talk because it really underscores the complexity and the challenges that this particular market presents. I'd like to encourage all of our listeners to please download the full report by scanning the QR code here. And on this note, I also would like to thank both Jenny and Simon for being with us today. You can also reach them directly if you have any specific questions or would like to talk more about the findings within the report. I'd like to also take this time to thank Simon and his team at Consumer Search Group for collaborating with us on this very timely report. And to everyone joining us all over the world, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.